At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Carbine, it's multimedia. You can get text, translate to whatever language, getting away with the legacy equipment and going into a cloud-based solution.
It's the first time in U.S. history that we have an EZNet through cloud-native call handling.
As a police officer, to have the victim go video, that's unheard of.
You're getting upgrades every month, not every year.
To schedule your free Carbine demo, please visit carbine.com/WTT.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Carbine, and a big shout out to patrons, as always, for everything. Thank you so very much. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you, but especially those who are here watching, listening, sharing, and supporting. Thank you for everything. It is, oh man, what day is it today? It's like November 15th, I think. Something like that, and it is going by super fast. I am, as you can see, I'm in a hotel room. I'm traveling again. I think the last episode that I put out possibly was or one of the last ones, I was in Little Rock, and I was traveling out there as well. But I'm out here for the 2022 New Jersey NENA conference, and it has been amazing so far. There's been a lot of great sessions. The vendor hall has been awesome, and a lot of interesting things going on out here in Atlantic City. This is my first time out here, and well, I'll save some of those stories for later on. It has definitely been interesting, but it has been really good. And tomorrow from noon to 1, I will be doing Imagine Listening for the first time out here at this conference. And that's one of the things that I want to do going into 2023 is going to conferences that I've never been to before and bringing Imagine Listening there, and maybe recording some episodes for the podcast as well. But for Imagine Listening, that's one of the main things that I want to do is head out to conferences that I've never been to and do Imagine Listening there. So if you have a conference that's coming up, let me know for 2023. I am excited for my guest to be on today. We were already talking a bit before we started recording here, and I'm definitely excited for this. This is going to be a lot of fun. We get to learn a lot from my guest here and what she's doing with Help for the Headset. But we're going to learn a lot more about her first because she's got about 14 years in dispatching and stuff with 911. So without further ado, my guest for today is Shannon, and she's a 911 dispatcher with Santa Clara County out of California, as well as founder of Help for the Headset. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yes. This is going to be good. And like I said, we were already talking earlier, and I thought, man, we could have been coworkers. Like this is going to be fun. I'm excited for this. So so how's everything going? It sounds like you're kind of busy.
Yes. Like you said, it is going by so fast. That was a perfect description. I've been doing a lot of different in California. I don't know. We have POST. I don't know if every state has that. It's the Police Officer Standards of Training.
Oh, okay.
And it's what controls dispatcher training. It's the requirement. You have to have 3 weeks when you first start. It's this whole thing. So anyway, so I've been working on getting my master instructor, post instructor certification. So I now have my advanced, and so I have to work on master next. But that is just one of the things that has been happening. And then, like we talked about, all the call for papers for the conferences have been happening as well. And I hope to get out for some of those because they're a lot of fun for me to learn, as well as to go teach. Like we talked about, also it's work when you go teach, but man, it gets you energized to go to these conferences and take the classes too, though. So and then I work, the actual job that I do. So, no big deal.
I think that's one of the things that I like as well, is that a lot of those, it does re-energize you, right? When you get out of it and then you head back, there's so much that you end up learning that you want to bring back and that you want to talk about. But then there's also those times as well where you have so much information, you have no idea where to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, here's a little bit about me. When I was at APCO actually this last year, and teaching my cumulative PTSD class, but I went to so many classes, and I actually had I don't know, for lack of a better, a panic attack. I just felt panic for how much information I was getting and how useful and helpful it would be. And I had no way of figuring out how to bring it back. Working for a county has pros and cons to it, but one of the cons, unfortunately, is you can't just come back and be like, all right, everybody, I've got some amazing information. Let's dig in and implement. And like, there's so many steps to try and do it. And that's where I literally had like I don't know how I can share all of this information. I don't know what to do with it. So I have a therapist. I'm very proud to say that. And so she helped me with it. But it was to the point where it was, oh my God, there's so much good stuff. So I'm very grateful to go to them. But wow.
With all of that coming out, like, were your coworkers or anybody else like, why are you Mount St. Helensing on me? Like, what is going on? Like, you're you're erupting.
They're used to me. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it. Like, I come in with, I'm a lot. I don't know there's no other way to really say that, but because I come in and I'm like, I have got ideas. So my bosses definitely are used to me being a lot. I did learn to stop apologizing for it, at least. But
good. Yes. No, that is good, because being a lot can be really good, especially when you've got the right outlet, you've got the right people there, and there's all of this stuff that you can put out there, and don't apologize for that shit.
Yeah. It took a while. There was one time where I'm like, I wanted to be like, I know I'm a lot, I'm sorry. And I was like, no, I'm getting stuff done. I am a lot. And this is why we have A, B, and C. And I'm not saying I'm perfect or great, or that I do it the best way I should, but I come out. So my coworkers, though, are definitely like, I'm always out there and always doing stuff. So they're used to me coming back and being like, oh God, she just came back from the conference. Like, here we go. But so I do have a long running to-do list based on conference information. So I do have to parse it out, or it would just overwhelm as opposed to be useful, if that makes sense.
That is always good, though, because there always has to be, there has to be someone, at least one person that brings stuff back, because otherwise the center's not going, they're not going to move forward, right? There's no evolution or anything. So that's good. They should be happy that they have someone, like you, that is going around and learning all of this, bringing it back, and just being that person that's, that lightning rod for all of everything to come in and then to be able to put it out. But how how did you get started to begin with? Because as I said in the beginning, you've got about 14 years, right?
Yeah.
That's some history there. But
Yeah.
let's go back in time. How
Yeah.
did you get into public safety to begin with? Do you come from a public safety family, or did you just kind of fall in?
So, no, I don't come from a public safety family. Although oddly enough, my dad was a dispatcher for the city of Fremont for 18 months. So it was a
Oh,
very short, but that was never a part of, like, it wasn't, like, we weren't a gold family. Like, I don't even think that was a thing that people knew about
yeah.
way back then. Like that. I mean, like, we're still working our way up as dispatchers, so that was not a thing back when my dad was one. But I am now. Now I'm excited. I found a picture of him in his uniform. He passed this year, and I found a picture of him in his uniform, and I'm like, this is awesome. So it's a special thing, but it wasn't what got me going. But like I had mentioned, it just feels like a different life ago. So I was one of those people that did like 3 or 4 different jobs, which I loved because as I've made clear, I'm a lot. So I was bouncing around and just doing all the different jobs. And I found an ad for, it was Scotts Valley Police Department. So it's a tiny little town in Santa Cruz County
Mhm.
that has their own police department. And they basically put out, hey, do you want to do something different, something exciting, something, like they did a good job with their little flyers, by the way, back then. And newspaper ads was how we found jobs. All you young kids out there, like,
Youngins, this is how
yeah,
we did it.
that's how we found jobs. I legitimately remember opening a newspaper and looking in the ads. So but so I'm like, yeah, I do want something exciting and something different. So I applied. I had no idea. I took and it's a post test. So for those in California would know, it's this huge test that you take that tests your short-term memory. It's like a 3-hour test. It's weird. And I don't know that it's super applicable to dispatch, but that's what you always start with. And I'm like, that was fun when I left. So and then when I was getting my background done, somebody was describing to my backgrounder how I really enjoy playing the video games where it's really high pressure and you have a time limit and you have to do like 18 things at one time before the time runs out. And I found those fun. And so the backgrounder's like, yeah, all right, I think this might actually work for her. So it was kind of, it was kind of a fluke that I found it. And then, man, once I found it, I went all in. I only spent 2 years at that small department before I got really bored. Because it is a safe city to work in, but a boring place to work because it's so safe for dispatch. And we only did law. So then I moved to the county after only 2 years, and then got to I do law, fire, and med now. Like, so and then all the different things that being in a larger agency can afford, all the different roles I play there. So that's so I started small and then kind of worked my way up. So it's been 12 years at the county, and I did 2 years for the small city before that.
So do you remember ever having like any conversations or anything with your dad about his time, those 18 months that he was in dispatch? Like, did you hear any stories, or, did he come home kind of different, maybe from a hard day or something? Like, did any of that ever, come out at all?
So so my dad was not, he was born in the 50s. So he was very stoic. So getting a lot of emotion from him was hard. Not to say that he wasn't, it's not like he withheld, but he certainly wasn't somebody that came home and like went for it. But he did talk about it in terms of, he was very proud of it. He went into code enforcement after that, so it's not like he left completely. So we did hear stories, actually more of code enforcement focus, hoarder houses and that kind of thing. But the dispatch, I remember him taking me for a walk through the building. And so I actually remember that and how cool I thought it was as when because I was really young when he did that. So, but then when I became a dispatcher, again, it was not like now where it's at least more acceptable to kind of dig in and talk about what the experience was. But he was excited that I got to do something that he got to do. But I don't think he ever actually shared like, oh, well, this can be really hard. Be careful. You know, I mean, like it wasn't one of those kinds of things. But I do remember he was very, very proud of it, and that he got to do it, and then showing us around his department when we were younger. So, and that was a big deal. I still remember, I know this is a weird thing to remember, but like the building was made of stone instead of cement. And so I remember it being like an exciting thing and remembering that. And then how dark the room was.
Right.
We're not allowed to have it dark in our agency. And so I remember being very surprised when I started my job and being like, but it's so bright in here. I remember it being so dark where my dad worked. So
See, and that's why I asked too, because you had your dad doing this job for some time, and then there's little things that you end up remembering, and like you said, you don't know why that kind of stuck out, but it was something that you remember. So then what I was going to ask too is that when you first got in there, was there anything that surprised you, or were there any things that you remembered as a kid that your dad talked about, maybe that you thought, oh, this is what he was talking about, or this was similar, or this is different? Was there anything, like when you walk in, like what did you see, and was it overwhelming at all?
Yes. Oh, so I remember, so I teach in the Basic Dispatch Academy now for the post thing. And I always remember, I will always tell people how overwhelming the sounds are when you walk into a dispatch center. It's just noise. Like, it's the other agency's radios. It's your radio. It's the actual radio. It's the TV. It's the phones. It's the people talking. And that was in a small department. And I just remember being like, how do you hear individual things? Like, I was so overwhelmed with how you would hear, and everybody seemed unfazed by all the different sounds, like that were happening. And so that I do remember noise being so overwhelming. And now, you did the job 13 years, you can weed out and pick out, you can hear exactly what someone's saying across the room, even though you're on the phone and and the radio is going and the TV's, whatever. You really learn how to passively listen to everything in the room. So, but that was very overwhelming for me when I first started, for sure.
So the first agency that you were at, how many people were working on the floor at a time, and were they 8-hour or 12-hour shifts? So
12-hour shifts, and it was 2 during the day and solo cholo at nighttime. So this is a weird thing to say, but man, you learn how to go to the bathroom so fast.
Yes.
And I say that because when I worked for the county, I would go and people started timing me because it was so fast and they thought it was weird. And I had to explain to them why, when you're by yourself, you could call in an officer to come cover you, but who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that. So that was also a weird thing that stands out.
I can imagine them saying, Shannon, do you really go to the bathroom?
Did you wash your hands? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Any of it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally do. And okay. I'm like, you were by yourself, man. That 911 call rang or the radio line rang. It's not like you were going to answer while you were in the bathroom. So
that's hilarious.
They go very fast. So, but no, it was very tiny. It was a small department. But now there's 14 on the floor at a time.
Oh man.
So huge. Again, small city to big county, huge difference. So at least when you call out sick, no one's getting called in for you, which is nice.
That is nice. That is good. So when just to compare a little bit, when I very first started dispatching, I was dispatching at a small police department in Central Florida. The city was called Frost Proof.
Sure. Seems right. Seems fitting.
Well, and so this is stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've said it before, but I'm going to say it anyway. There was one time when I was working there, and there was a bank alarm, and I had to call, and I was immediately put on hold, and which was not supposed to happen.
Right.
And I'm listening, and we already have people going out there because I was like,
Sure.
"They put me on hold," and they're like, "Uh-oh, okay, then well, we're gonna head out there." And so I'm waiting for the person to come back on, and the recording that's going on says, "Do you know the history of frostproof?" And it says the city used to be called Keystone. However, one winter, all of the orange groves, all the orange crop ended up getting destroyed. It got
Yeah.
frost over, except for in Keystone.
Stone.
The
Yeah.
mayor decided to change the name from Keystone to Frostproof. I was like, hell no.
It was a brag, basically.
It
Is
was
what it was.
yes. Yeah. So what ended up happening with that bank alarm was it was a new person. They didn't remember
Sure.
protocol. There was nothing going on there. So
Yeah.
everything was fine.
Put me on hold.
But the city is very small. So like 2 traffic lights, a McDonald's, and like a grocery store, and everything else that's in a small city. But
Yeah.
that's how big it was. And it was just me for 8 hours, and the same way, you learn how to go to the bathroom fast. But I would get on the radio and I would say, it's frostproof to 108, and 108, go ahead. It was like, I'm going to be 10-7 down the hall. They'd go 10-4.
Yeah.
Like, and so then I would go, and I would have the radio with me, and then praying that no calls came in
Just
or
in
no
case,
radio
yeah.
traffic. Yeah. And I remember coming out of the bathroom, because the police department, you walk in, and when you walk in, it's just a little lobby area, this little like, plexiglass, and on the other side was me.
Yep.
So anybody could walk in. And I remember coming out of the bathroom once, and I look over and I see someone standing there, and I'm just standing there. I'm like, hi. And they're like,
Hi. Yeah.
hi, how are you doing? I wasn't sure if anybody was here in the PD. And I said, no, I was just using the restroom. How long have you been here? And the person goes, long enough. And I was like, oh my God, did you hear me?
Noted. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yes. But like it was also a complete culture change when I ended up moving back home to Southwest Michigan and working, finishing off my career in the county that I grew up in.
Yeah.
Because now, definitely not as big as yours, 14 people on at a time. We had 3. The minimum was 3 on at the time, and we worked 12-hour shifts, and so we were working from 5 to 5. So, and I worked the midnight shift.
Yeah.
But when I was supervisor, then it was 4:30 to 4:30. But either way, on the weekend, then there would be 4 of us. The 4th person would work 1P to 1A, so like an overlapping shift.
Yeah.
And that's how it went down. But like the call volume was complete, it was higher.
Yeah.
And I was doing all disciplines working in the small police department, so I knew that dynamic already.
Yeah.
But then going to the county, we were doing all the main medicals and EMD stuff, where at the PD we didn't do that. So it was a lot different.
Yeah. No, it's a huge difference. We didn't do fire and med at all in the small agency.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge shift for sure. But at least you had somebody, cover. I know it's a weird thing to have the bathroom thing be the big standout from my first agency, but it's just, but that difference of going and it's so weird hearing that, a bigger agency. See, I think we're big in terms of having 14, and then yours was bigger because there was 3 or 4. And then you hear about some of these agencies that there's like full staffing, like for all their it's like 250 dispatchers, 60 at a time on the floor. But that's insane to me. I can't, and they're understaffed. And that's insane to me.
Yes.
Because we're understaffed. Well, I mean, we're missing 35 people. So we should have more than 14, 14 on the floor for what we do. But it's just that jump from a small agency to a big one is huge. Again, pros and cons on everything. The small agency, I will say, we did at least get, for better or worse, you were with your team for 6 months, and they came back into the department all the time. So you got information from them. You got the story, you got the end. And that's significant in the big agency because we're separate. So we're not attached to the sheriff's department. We're not attached to county EMS. So we don't get, unless we go out of our way to call somebody, we don't get the story. We don't get to end, basically. So the closure piece is a huge difference.
Oh,
Or
for
lack of
sure.
closure at a bigger agency too. So
Yes. So when you first started,
Mhm.
do you remember any of those first calls, or even your first call? Like for me, when I first started working, I went in that night, right? The chief of police, like I had waited 2 months and I hadn't heard a word from the police department. I thought, well, I guess I screwed
I
up.
guess yeah.
Yeah, and the chief of police actually showed up at my house,
Whoa.
and my grandmother basically kicks in the door to the room where I was starting to doze off because I
What
was
did
about
you
to take a
do?
nap. Yeah, that's exactly what she said. She was yelling at me in Spanish. She goes, "What did
Yeah.
you do? What did you do?"
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't do anything." And she's
Yeah.
like, "Police are here. You better get out there." So I go outside and I see the chief and I say hello and he goes, "Do you still want the job?" And I said, "Well, of course. I thought that I screwed
Yeah.
something up." And he goes, "No, we just got a long background process." And I said, "Well, when do I start? Like next week or something?" And he goes, "No, you start tonight."
Oh
And
my gosh.
and he goes, "You want the job, don't you?" And I said, "Well, yes, sir, I do.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to start tonight."
Unprepared. Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes, "Well, you're working the midnight shift." So it was 10 p to 6 a was the midnight shift. And they switched every 2 weeks. So it was
Oh,
6 a to 2 p, 2 p to 10 p, and then when you got in the midnight shift, 10 p to 6 a, you worked that for like a month. And then you went straight to that morning shift again. So
wow.
it was
That's
hard, but it was also
gnarly
fun
physically.
at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Perfect word for it. It's definitely gnarly. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I get in there that night and I meet my trainer. His name was Harry, and I'll just say that he was very seasoned, a
Yes.
very seasoned
Yeah.
dispatcher.
Salty,
Yeah,
salty old guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little crusty, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was hilarious. He was awesome. But um, he showed me everything, and he took a 911 call. And the thing was there, we weren't EMD certified or anything like that. We would just take the pertinent information, transfer it to county radio, is what they called it, just the central dispatch of the county, because they did EMD over
Got
there.
it. Okay. Yeah.
And then we would tone out for fire rescue. So he takes the call and I'm observing him. And then he's done with the call. And then he
Yeah.
turns around and looks at me and he goes, "All right, now it's your turn."
Me? No.
Yeah,
Somebody else, right? Yeah.
guy
Like,
over there, right? Like
yeah.
outside, like, are you
I just
serious?
got here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought he was joking, and he's like, "I'm not joking." Like he just gives me this debt, like he was
Yeah.
peering into my soul. And he he goes, "The only way you're going to learn how to do this is by jumping in and doing it." He goes,
Yeah.
"Basically, this job is being human, having thick skin, and common sense." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And that first call was a butt dial, thank the Lord.
You're like, nailed it. Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't anything big or bad or anything
Yeah.
like that. So, do you remember your first call at that agency? Or maybe not so much the first call, but some of the earlier ones that you took?
So yeah, so yes, I will. I'll give both. So the first, the first agency, I was very much like everybody when they walk in the job, like, okay, like this is gonna be amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I'm gonna save people. I got this. So I was floored again, small town. So I would hang up the phone and turn to my trainer and be like, people call 911 for this? Like, I don't understand. Like, it really, like, that was my biggest, because I don't remember the first call. I remember being absolutely floored by what people called the police department for and what people in a small town called the police department for, and then what people call 911 for. Like, I was serious. Like, that took the sheen off real fast, basically. So, I mean, gosh, like I've lived here 30 years and never seen this car before. And you're only that internal response is like, uh-huh, like it's a car. Like, so you've seen every car in the world? Like, I don't know. Like, so it was things like that, or the ones where they don't belong here kind of calls. And I was shocked by the fact that we get them at Santa Clara County, which is such a diverse county in such a diverse state. We still get those calls. So that still floors me. And, somebody who's at the park in the afternoon, they think it's weird. I mean, just so things like that. Somebody was changing a light bulb. I will say though, somebody was changing a porch light bulb and it wasn't their house. So that one was weird. But still, I'm just like, but where's like the real, like, where are the real emergencies? Like, it was probably a good 2 weeks before I got an actual legitimate emergency call. And even then it was that somebody had a gun and robbed the Walgreens, and it took them a good 45 seconds to tell me that they had a gun. They were just like, yeah, I was at the store. I mean, again, we all know this story. Like, I was at the store and this happened and this happened. And then they put the gun on the counter and you're like, what? Hold on, let's go back. Did you say they had it? So, I mean, like, so I think that, like, it was my first big emergency call. And even then it wasn't, I had already started them because someone stole some stuff. Like, that's how the call came out. And then it turned into this melee because there was a gun involved, but they didn't tell me until we were almost done with the call. So that stuff surprised me a ton. It still surprises me. I think that wears people out almost more than the legitimate, this is my opinion, legitimate emergencies, because those are what you're there for. You're there to actually help someone with an emergency versus 8 out of 10 calls being really calls, so I'm, then there's the basic non-emergency, but actual police calls. But, when you get those, like, those are, I think, wear people down a lot. But then at Santa Clara County, my first day with my first trainer, I got one of the frequent flyers, but I didn't know yet because it was my first day. And all I see, he's just saying crazy things. And I look over and my trainer has unplugged his phone and is reading a newspaper after he unplugged. And I'm just like, oh God, I'm on my own. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And that was my first call there. And I assumed I was at least coherent enough. Like, I had been doing the job for 2 years before that, knowing like he must know something I don't know about this person because he's unplugged from the phone call. But that was still like this, like, looking over and being like, he's not even plugged in. He's not even paying attention. I'm in a lot of trouble. So I know those aren't the traditional, like, first big calls, but those are what I remember. Again, why they stand out, I don't know. But
those are the ones that kind of they don't fully shape everything that you're going to end up dealing with, but it's enough. It's the taste, right, of some of the stuff that you're going to get into where you think, is this real life?
Right.
And, so that first time for me, that was the call that I shared with you. It was just a dial. But when I ended up moving back home and started working for the county that I grew up in, again, oh man, it was a pattern now that I think about it, because it was midnight shift. My first shift was a midnight shift, and I loved midnight shifts.
It's a different world, though, for sure. Yeah.
So I go in, and I'm sitting with my trainer, and I'm on the umbilical cord listening as she's taking a call, and this guy calls in, and it's real late at night now, and he goes, yeah, I need you guys to send out an ambulance and an officer. I was driving, and I thought I saw like a deer that was kind of like crawling on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And I stopped to check on it, and to call you guys and maybe have someone come out to put it down. He goes, but it's a person. And
you both are like,
yeah. I look at my trainer and she's looking at me, but the look in her eyes to me, thinking about it now, was more so like, oh shit, is he gonna leave? Like me, like, am I gonna leave because of what I'm listening to? And I'm just looking at her like, keep talking, like, like, keep going.
Tell me more. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I want to hear where this is going. So, he ends up saying, I got out to check on this person, and their jaw is hanging off.
Oh my God.
Their face, and they're still alive.
Yeah.
You need to get somebody out here. So what had happened was that the person tried to commit suicide with a shotgun and slipped. And when the person slipped, it shot the
Yeah.
jaw pretty much
Oh,
all the way off,
yeah.
just hanging there. And I'm just listening as this is going on and observing as she's doing her thing. We've got everybody heading out there, and then she gets off the call and she looks at me and she goes, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I am. Why?"
Yeah.
And she goes, I don't know. I guess I thought you might leave or something." I was like, Why? I already have 3.5 years of experience under my belt."
I know weird things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy
it's like,
things.
I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting this to be the first call that I hear,
Right.
but, um,
But I'm
let's
not
keep
shocked.
going.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah,
shocked to
yeah,
my
I'm not
core.
shocked,
Yeah.
like, let's
Yeah.
just keep going, but, yeah, that was the first one, the very first night, and I'm listening, and I thought, "Holy hell, this is completely different than the little town that I was working in
Yeah.
before." Um, so with everything that you did, from the time that you were there for those 2 years, and then you end up going to the bigger agency and stuff, what was the training like then? Um, how was that for you? Like, how long did it last, and how many phases were there, or were there any phases? The reason I asked too is because every center, it seems, their training is different.
Way different. Yeah.
And for myself, as I told you, I was already on phones that first night at the police department. But when I go to the central dispatch in Allegan County, we had 4 phases. So, like, the first phase was geography and phones, and then the second phase was actually radios. They put
Yeah.
us on main radios for law enforcement. The third phase was our lean console, which in Michigan they call it lean. In Florida they call it FCIC. It's just where you run NCIC stuff.
Oh, got it.
You
Okay.
run for the plates and everything else,
Okay.
but it was also backup phones and backup radios, so that spot could be hopping.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then the fourth phase was the shadow phase. So, your trainer's on the other side of the room and you're working with everybody as a team.
Yeah.
So what was your training like?
So in the smaller agency, it was literally one-on-one. And as it happened, it's just such at a pace though, that as it happened was pretty like widely spread out. So then you were going over your manual, like that whole thing in between. And it was kind of just, you got maybe 2 trainers and it was maybe 2 big chunked phases kind of a thing. And you would train on day shift minus 1 week on night shift where you learned what you did there. But day shift was there. So then shadow was, they just didn't kind of pay attention to you, but you were 2 feet from each other. So,
Yeah.
but then going to county, and the phases have stayed pretty much the same since I've started. So you get 3 to 4 rotations with a different person. And I was incredibly lucky with my trainer. I mean, you hear nightmare trainer stories.
Yeah.
I had amazing trainers, all 3 of my phases. I also have a white cloud. So it made it hard to train me because nothing happened. I would literally unplug and a pursuit would happen and I would plug back in and they would go code 4. So it was to the point where it was a joke. I mean, like, how calm. I just said, I'm good for the county because I'm there and it's calm and nothing happens, and I leave and it goes to crap. So, so you spend 8 to 10 weeks with each trainer in each phase. So we, though, don't have, so you do call taking and radio and you have backup. So you learn call taking and your backup positions first, but that can be whatever your trainer decides that they want that day. Like when I train, I hate sitting on the desk. So I at least have my trainees do the backup and the call taking. So they're getting both because I hate being bored. So when I was training, though, that's my trainer liked rotating me onto the channel every once in a while because, and I agree, it makes you a better call taker when you're sitting on the radio and you get really crappy calls routed to you. So, and it gives you a better idea of the bigger picture, sitting at the radio and then going and taking calls. So like you get an idea of what they're going to ask for. Now, by the way, we are, how you say EMD, we have EPD. So we are scripted for law, fire, and med. That was just this year. So that was a big change. But when I was training, it was just three 8-week chunks. And then the very last trainer, I used to complain. I'm like, you never even talked to me. And he's like, yeah, because you were in shadow phase. Like, because I sat far away from you. I'm like, I don't even think I learned anything from, giving him a hard time, but I don't even think I learned anything from you because you didn't talk to me. So, so my last phase was shadow, but because I had done it for 2 years, so I had kind of already knew how to take at least all the basic calls. I knew how to run people. So the NCIC thing you were talking about.
Yeah.
I already knew how to read those returns because they don't change, obviously, agency to agency. They're the state to state. But so that I already had that, and that's a complicated thing to train. I train that now in our academy, so because I love it, and I'm weird like that. But I love that stuff. I get super into it, and everybody hates it, and so I'm the one that teaches it. So
Perfect.
Yeah, but so that for training, and it's stayed pretty similar in terms of phases like that for our training. You usually are training for about a year now. So
okay.
So it's a good, decent amount of time. And we have we have a 6 to 8 week academy, in-house academy that you do before you even hit the floor to get the basic understanding.
That's pretty awesome then.
Yeah, it's significant, and it's weird because you tell them throughout academy, you're going to get out there and you'll feel like none of this applies, but we need to at least lay the foundation for you. And then they get out there and they're like, yeah, I don't feel like we've used anything from academy. Like, we know we tried to tell you that, but you understand how it works at least. And
right. Yes.
We need that. So, but we don't have time. A lot of times it's busy enough and they jump in pretty quick.
I think that's good because there's a lot of places that don't either have an academy or they don't do sit-alongs.
Yeah.
And you'll end up having someone who comes in where they're just completely, they're all about it, right?
Yep.
They might be doing great on the geography stuff, memorization of codes and ORIs and all this other stuff, but then when it gets to that phone call, especially that first 911 call, a lot of times people end up leaving. They're like, this is not what I wanted. And so I feel like it's good to have those sit-alongs, have some sort of academy or something before they get out on the floor, or even listening to phone calls to be like, this is what you're going to be dealing with. This is some of this is scary shit, but you have to know what you're getting into. And that's kind of how you end up weeding out some of the people that maybe they thought they could do it, and turns out that they can't, or they just they don't want to, or whichever.
Yeah, this is different than what they thought. Yeah, we've had people leave who it wasn't even the scary but it was the weird ones where they're like, oh, like, again, gives you the different side of humanity. And they're like, I don't like this. And then they would leave, as opposed to like, oh, that was scary. Like, they're just like, no, people can be terrible. So, and it wasn't even an emergency, even that kind of thing. And we've definitely had people leave from that. And what do? You spend all your time preparing them for that. Like, I don't know how to prepare you for some of the calls or that 8 out of 10 calls are going to be nothing. And then that 9 and 10th call, whoa, like, it's going to kick your ass.
Right.
And you got to be ready for that too. So it's hard to prepare people for that. Or when you try and explain it to people and they do and I know, but well, what's your worst call? What's the worst call you've ever taken? And nobody answers that question. I always tell people, I'm like, you should answer it one time and like really go into it, and then just see how awkwardly they walk away from you because they don't know how to handle what you just told them as your job. Like,
I did it a couple times.
Yeah. And how did they respond?
So this would happen before I started doing everything that I do, because in the beginning, for whatever reason, I would get kind of annoyed, because it was almost like a bloodthirsty thing. Like,
absolutely.
What about this? What about that?
Train wreck.
Yeah. Like, man, you guys have no idea. Like, this is really hard. Like, this is something that's been in me and stuff. And then I ended up switching the mindset and turning it into public education because, as humans, we're just curious, right?
Sure.
And so I thought, I'm not gonna have that thought process. I'm gonna take this as an opportunity to educate the public. So I would go and get my hair cut, and this is when it would always happen, going to get my hair cut, because there's the small talk that happens.
Yep.
And they'd say, so what do you do for a living? And
yep.
do I say what I do? And then I would tell them, And they would go, "Oh, that sounds like a fascinating job." And I'm like, well, it is pretty fascinating. There's a lot of shit that happens that you would never think. And the stuff that you see on the news, it's not always the way they put it out there.
Right.
There's always a different part of that story. And that would come out, what's the craziest call, or what's the worst call you've ever had?
Mhm.
And every time, except for the handful of times that I actually did say something, I would say a funny one, or I
Yep,
would say,
always.
uh,
Stupid, funny,
yeah,
yep.
yeah, instead of crazy, more so outrageous, it was a naked person that was on stilts, that's walking
Yep.
around or something like that, or a verbal domestic that was, these people were fighting over their spam or something. That was actually a call that I had once. So,
Sure.
and I would tell them that, but then I would one handful of times actually started talking about a worse call, and they're like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like, why did you tell me that?" And I said, "You asked me."
You asked.
Yeah,
Yep.
you asked about it, so you were lucky enough to hear it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't go through, the detail, but
Sure.
just a high level of that call, and that high level was just enough for them to be like, "Okay,
Yeah.
can you tell me a funny call now?" Because
Yeah.
it's like
I
it's like if you're watching a scary movie, right? And you're like, "Okay, afterwards, maybe I should watch like a Disney movie or something."
see a palate cleanser, if you could
Yes.
help me with that. Yeah, that would be great.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm like, you default to funny and stupid. Let
Right.
me tell you how stupid people are, and then you just kind of go into that and you deflect it. But yeah,
Exactly. You deflect it with humor and everything.
yeah,
So as I guess, so we're kind of on the topic here,
yeah.
and only if you feel comfortable sharing as well. But what is one of the calls that kind of sticks with you?
I've been extremely lucky, for as big as our county is, not to have taken some, for not to have taken constant difficult calls like some big agencies or urban areas are crazy. I can't even imagine that. But I had one where I answered it, and the only way I can describe the sound was just wailing on the phone. I mean, like, incredibly painful wails is all it was. And thank God she was calling from a landline. And so I started the call, but there wasn't a way to get through to her. Like, I had to just keep talking to her. So it was an adult, but had found her adult daughter had slit her wrist in the bathtub. And it took me a decent amount of time just to get that much. And it's still, I'm all goosebumpy right now. Like, it's still just that sound of just so much pain.
Yeah.
And not being able to get why. And so then I just talked to her, because again, I had the address okay, I can send people to this. And I consider that a huge blessing, because otherwise we would have never gotten anywhere. But I got her. She choked out that my daughter, in the bathtub. And so it was, okay, did she hurt? And so instead of that whole big, like, ma'am, I need you to answer my question, like, thank goodness. It was just a very, like, dropped into the, okay, did she hurt herself? I mean, like, there was no way yelling at her, or to her, not at her, but to her. That wasn't going to work.
Right.
And so but I just sat there trying to figure it out, but then trying not to, and not even knowing what had happened fully yet. And I just wanted to cry. Like, this sound was just so painful. So I just was trying to talk to her and tell her, like, I'm really sorry that this happened to you. Like, there's nothing, I've got people coming to help you. And she was, I don't even know if she heard me, because she was just crying. So I could hear her husband in the background, and he was kind of saying what was going on. So we pieced it together before the deputies got there. But I can feel, I would say, like I said, I have goosebumps, but I can feel it in my heart. Like, it's that chest tightening, like someone was in so much pain.
Right.
And I hung up, and because I had been doing what I've been doing for so long, and I've been teaching other people about cumulative PTSD for years now, I got up, because I was on my desk, which was good. So I could take a moment, went in, and I called my husband, he's been a paramedic he was a paramedic for 15 years, and he's been a deputy for another 10, 12 years. So he understood. So I called him and I cried on the phone with him. And I'm like, that was really sad. Like, that was really sad. And so he's like, yeah, I get it. Those are the sounds you're never going to forget, that kind of stuff. So, and then I went back in and I was okay because I got to talk about it with somebody and I got to process it. So, but I can, like I said, still feel the sound, if that makes sense, which I assume makes sense for other dispatchers. So
yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think it's because excuse me, as it's an odd thing, right? Where you have people that are calling who are living basically their worst nightmare.
Yep.
They're putting trust in a voice, and you are that person, and that that's in your head as well. But also with that trust, like we're connected as humans as well through emotion, and us being dispatchers and all, we're empaths, so we put ourselves in the caller's shoes in a way. We're calm, cool, and collected, right? But in the back of our minds, we're kind of freaking out with them as well, because we're right there.
Yeah.
And you're piecing all of it together in
And
your
we're imagining it. Yep.
yeah. And sometimes it's worse than what it actually is, but especially in this case, it's there, it's that bad.
Yeah.
And but you're also you're feeling it with them, so that wailing that you were talking about, you were giving me goosebumps as I was listening to it as well, because we have that connection, and it's that heartache, that emotion that you can feel through those calls. And I think that's why it's so powerful and why it stays with us. But the more that we talk about things, it's easier for us to manage it. So like you were saying, you were able, luckily, to go off the floor and call your husband and have that emotional moment with him, and then go back in there, where a lot of people sometimes they might have a call like that and they don't have someone to talk to.
Yep.
And they decide, I don't know if I can continue doing this. And some of them stay and some of them leave.
Yeah. Or some of them, and this is and I've been so lucky to have been educated enough, again, because this is what I want people to understand too. But some people just assume, like, okay, there it is. I'm tucking it away. Because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to compartmentalize this, and that's just part of my job. And we know that does not work, and that hurts us so much, physically and mentally and emotionally. And then we just stack it away, and at some point it's all those boxes we stack up are gonna leak and fall and make a mess. But I've been very lucky, and I try very much at my agency to push that as much as possible, as talking about it with somebody. And then I even followed up with my therapist, and she said, sounds like you've been able to process it. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm very lucky that I've been able to process it. So for me, and for what the Imagine Listening, allowing people to share is huge. And I don't think people understand how big that is, because someone's giving them the safety and the space to share it without anybody, without it being a random person of the public being like, oh, but, asking a worse question, or I don't know, just, again, having the safe space to share it is so huge. And I think people underestimate how powerful it is getting to share it with somebody who understands it. So
yeah, I agree fully. I had a session that I did once. I did Imagine Listening in Illinois, and I remember there was a girl who was sitting like this is how much I remember. She was sitting in the third row, and everyone is sharing stories, right? It's emotionally intense, and you can see like she's having some kind of emotion, but you can kind of tell like she's got her arms folded and just kind of just kind of watching everything that's going on. And then we get to the funny part, and there's a little more of the humor, the humorous emotion and stuff that's coming out of this person. And it was an excellent session, standing room only. Everybody got out what they were trying to get out, and those who were there who didn't share stories, they were there in support of each other, which is the stuff that we need, right? And then I go back to the booth and I'm sitting there, and that person ends up
Yeah.
coming up, and she sits with me, and she goes, I feel like something's wrong with me. And I said, why do you say that? And she goes, well, I'm there listening to everyone, and I felt like I don't I don't know that I have these problems. Like I'm able to take these calls and just tuck them, and I don't think about them at all. So that's why I feel like there's something wrong with me, because I didn't have anything to share. And I was like, well, you were there in support of everyone, and I said it's not that there's something wrong with you. I said maybe you were able to process those a lot easier than others. But we sat there for just over an hour, and she shared several stories, like hard
Mhm.
ones.
Yeah.
And at the end, she goes, "See, like I really don't have, anything to share." And I said, "You see do you realize what we just did right
Yeah.
here?"
You really just did. Yeah.
Yeah, and she goes, What?" And I said, "You just shared with me some really deep stories."
Yeah.
And she's just kind of sat there, and she goes, "All right, well, thank you." and I said, maybe you needed to talk, but
Yeah.
you didn't know how to get it out at
Yeah.
that moment.
Or you had to start. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and maybe in that environment wasn't the best for you at that moment, but listening to everyone, maybe, why did you come to talk to me to begin with? And she goes, I'm not sure. I just
Yeah.
kind of felt like I needed to talk to you. And
Yep.
I'm glad we were able to talk.
Yeah. No, then I mean that's that presentation of like, I'm here, you're here. I feel like there's a reason why we're both here, kind of a thing. Yeah, that's incredible. And I think that's what frustrates me. I love this job, and there is so much that there. I think I really started trying to figure out how to help the people behind, like my people at first, and it drove me nuts because it is still such a prevalent idea of, to be good at your job, you can't be affected by the job.
Hmm.
And that bothers me to my core, because unless you're a sociopath, which is something
Like
else that should be looked at, or
that.
a robot, like you said, we're human beings, and we specifically are empaths. Like, of course we're going to be affected by the job, and many of us work the job, what, 50 to 65 hours a week, sometimes more,
Right.
and then go home, and we're barely home. How in the world are we not affected by this job? And so but it's put out there like, to be good, you got to tuck it away, don't be affected by it. And I think we're killing people by doing that. And
I think to be good, we have to be able to feel everything
yes,
and
that's yes.
really understand and process it. Because when I first started in 2001, I wasn't told that, so you're going to have to really, I had never heard self-care before. Like
Yeah, right.
that wasn't anything that was ever said to me.
Nope.
Even in my, excuse me, my 40-hour dispatcher's course that I eventually ended up taking, it was kind of mentioned a little bit, there's
Yeah.
going to be hard calls that you're going to take. But it wasn't,
That's it.
this is what
Yep.
you need to do to take care of
Yep.
yourself. Right. Yeah. It was taboo. And then, I was going through all these issues and stuff. And then I just started talking about it. I was like, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to write about it. I'm going to put it out there. And people started understanding. And it from like 2016 up till now, people are really talking about it
Yeah.
and getting it out there. And I think it's really good that finally, it's a new day that people are talking. Now I have a question for you before we transition over to what it is that you're doing as well. Um, how do you feel the job has changed you?
That's a good question. I think if you had asked me at 5 years and 10 years, like, there'd be different answers.
Oh, for sure.
I think at 5, I was that very stereotypical angry and resentful dispatcher. So I would have said that I think it made me more jaded, and the world is dark and ugly, and everybody's stupid. That's
Yeah.
I don't know if that last one's changed much for me, but and I knew I had to channel that energy into something else, so I started teaching dispatch in our agency, and then it has spun out into this whole other thing. 7 years, what's 9 years later, I can't do math, but but at first it really is this. Now, I will say it does change you in that you do see the world. You see the world in your 1% that we see, so that everybody is either a victim or a perpetrator, and that everybody is on probation or a sex registrant, or like nobody registers their car, or I mean, like
suspicion is out there.
Yes, yeah, everybody lies. I mean, like that's so. I do think that you start to see the world in the 1%. And I think that changes you. I think it takes a huge effort to make sure that you're looking for the other 99. But then once I started getting into the vulnerability part of it, and really understanding like what the PTSD and stress injuries and all of that stuff, it actually made me more, I used to pride myself on, and I think a lot of people do this, on not feeling anything. I was very cerebral. Emotions were for the weak people, and I don't want to feel them. I think they're terrible. So now the job has actually made it so I feel a lot more, and I don't like that. I know how important it is, but it has made me so that now I see everything in terms of trauma, if that makes sense. Like it's like I hear everything. I hear news stories and I'm like, oh my God, the trauma of this, like these poor people, instead of it being like, yeah, yep, that happens. And then even TV shows, I'm now like, if this really happened to these characters, they would be frozen with trauma. They wouldn't be able to carry on with their lives. And like it drives my husband nuts because
like we can't even watch a show.
TV. I'm like, I know, but if realistically, if these people really went through this, they couldn't continue their lives. Like, so now it really has made me more vulnerable. And I'm going to say in a good way, as uncomfortable as it is, because now I just want to have other people understand that it's okay to, feel all these things. So this is from my own personal journey, as much as my professional journey, understanding how important all that stuff is. So it has definitely been a very marked difference that the job has made me feel or be. But it depends on where in my career you would ask me. So, but
that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I get it though. I definitely get it. And so I'm the same way in the sense on seeing certain things on TV, like when just for example, watching something on TV with my kids, we'll be just sitting there watching whatever is on, and there will be a commercial for like a home security system or something. I'll start chuckling and they're like, why are you laughing? I'm like, because you can have all the bells and whistles and everything. Yeah. We don't have, if dispatch doesn't have an officer to send,
they're going.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how long it takes to get the phone call. So
right. Yeah. There's so much that goes into it. And then they're just kind of looking at me like, is that for real? I'm like, why would I lie to you? I'm your dad.
Yeah, I'm your dad. Everything I say is fact.
Exactly. Yes. Better listen. Yeah. So it's stuff like that. But
yeah, absolutely.
I get it. So, with this thought process, the experience that you have and just everything that you've gone through, was this also kind of your push and motivation or inspiration for what it is that you're starting to do now with Help for the Headset? Like, how did this come about?
So technically, I have taught at, so it's the California CLETS users group. So the CLETS is like the NCIC, but it's California. And I taught there, but I also went to a session. So another beautiful thing where you are learning something. And the speaker talked about PTSD in general and briefly like flew by cumulative PTSD. And it just like hit. And I'm like, I need more information on this one piece that you just like skimmed over. So I went home and turned it into this massive research project. I went to the very like foundations of it. So Kim Turner and Dr. Michelle Lilly, like the foundational people for getting dispatchers out there for the PTSD and everything like that, and just built this whole class on cumulative PTSD. And I thought I really nailed it in terms of like, this is it. If all we talk about is cumulative PTSD, we got it. Like, this is good. I'm helping people. So and that was, of course, years ago and very foolish of me. But so I started teaching it. I taught it at our agency and then at different conferences. And then this year I taught it. I realized there were conferences everywhere just this last year and a half. And I'm like, and not just the one that I knew about. So I started putting it out there. And so I got to do it at, so lucky, Navigator, CalNINA, and APCO all this year. And then at the CCUG, the California group. And in teaching it, I've developed and researched, but in the session I put at the very end, I talk about ways to mitigate it or lessen the impact or help keep the injury, especially now that we talk about injury as opposed to disorder, which I like a lot more with the injury part of it, how to try and avoid the injury as much. And someone after teaching came up to me and just said, hey, I appreciate that you didn't just teach about it, but also steps we can take to help or avoid it, or it's hard to avoid it sometimes, but you know, I mean, like to be healthier so that when it comes up, we're more prepared. And it was actually that moment that I was like, oh, I should be doing this about everything, like about not just this PTSD thing, but I mean, how can I help dispatchers get better sleep? Because all these wellness classes that I've been taking them in relation to the cumulative PTSD stuff. And then I'm like, wait, I can apply these everywhere. But we all take, I mean, it's starting to, at least we mostly take wellness classes, and there's some super well-meaning ones, but they're so vague. They tell you they tell you why dispatch is bad for you, and they tell you should be better. And then they don't give you any steps on how to do that. Just they tell you to be better.
Right.
And then, or you get the ones that are like sleep 8 hours, eat really healthy, and work out 5 to 6 times a week. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Number one, the job does not allow for it. I mean, there's been times where I've had 6 hours in between shifts, not to sleep, but to be at home and then go back. And right. I know I'm definitely not the only one out there. And then, yes, we all know we should eat healthy, but do we? Shift work is so hard to eat actually healthy. And then working out, some of us have chronic pain. Some of us have shift issues or movement issues, joint issues. So there's all these things. So from that came help for the headset in trying to give realistic options. So if you can't sleep 8 hours, how can you get the best sleep in the 6 that you're going to get? Yeah. So I talk about sleep hygiene and how to, I mean, I don't know how detailed you want me to get, but where it's literally like make your room dark, have your noises, no blue light, all that kind of stuff. And how comfort foods, I don't ever talk about nutrition in terms of like, you should eat healthy. We all know that. We're all adults.
Right.
But the danger of comfort food in terms of how it links to stress hormones, and then it becomes a need instead of a want, and alternatives to exercise. So movement alternatives like desk yoga. If you're just, the idea of if you're moving 22 minutes a day, you get exponential health benefits, but nobody said those 22 minutes have to be in a gym, on a treadmill. They can be at work. I mean, like, so there's a whole bunch of different things that we can do to be healthier people. And that makes us better dispatchers because we're healthier people. So it's this whole trickle down effect on how I ended up at wanting to do something bigger and better. And it's very overwhelming, but I know you understand because you
Oh,
just
for
have this,
sure.
I don't want to describe it like it's this internal like need or drive to do something bigger, and how that's going to look, I don't know exactly, or even how I'm going to get there, but I just know that it's there, and I got to get it out,
Mhm.
or it's just going to sit there and hurt, I think, for lack of a better thing. So, but that's how I got there, was somebody saying, "Hey, thanks for the steps." I'm like, I have more steps. So, um,
See, and that is good because there are a lot of sessions out there. There's a lot of other things where it is just the steps, or it is just an overview, a high level, and
yeah.
you go to these sessions, and I know that there's it's hard to fit a lot of stuff in
Oh
one
my
hour,
gosh.
but
Yeah.
if you have that hour, you whittle it down to the main things that you're going to be talking about,
Yeah.
because your audience, everybody who's out there who's putting out sessions and stuff, your audience is dispatch.
Yeah.
How they think, and you have to be there in that part, unless it's you're doing it storytelling style, and
Sure.
that's just where people are actually just listening and taking notes from whatever story it is that you're telling. But when you do it, you have to make it personal,
Yeah.
because that's when it's more powerful. That's when people understand a lot more. I mean, if you think about it, you can compare it to the types of phone calls that we're taking. These phone calls are personal. That's why they hit so hard as
Yep.
well. That's why they stick with us. So if you're going to be teaching something, make it personal, put it out there, make it those points, but also, give more of the meat of it, right? And not just the overview, so that people actually get something to take from it.
Yes.
And so I think that it's awesome that you've got this motivation and you have that thought process as well. And also, from what it sounds like, taking from sessions that you've been to, where you get in there and you're hearing a lot of the stuff, and it's like you're getting to the climax of the story,
Yeah.
or the session or whatever, and then it's
That's
done, and
it.
you're like, wait, what about this? Like
Your
this.
job's killing you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like,
How can I get away from
yeah.
my desk killing me? What
Yeah.
else can I do? Give me some steps. So I
Yeah.
think I think this is awesome, that you're taking this on, and you're putting out this information, because there's a lot of centers out there where they're most likely not talking about this stuff. It's just
Oh,
you take your call, you move on,
yeah.
and they're not thinking about the people who are taking those calls,
Yeah.
and how it's affecting them, that impact that's there.
It's shocking because at least in the circles I'm in and the conferences that we go to, I mean, wellness is just this massive push now. But you go like the Navigator one and APCO being national, technically international, but but this national thing, and then you hear these stories of these agencies that in other states, um, California is what it is. There's pros and cons to being here, but one of the pros is how much it pushes and regulates this kind of thing. In other states, you don't even have training standards, much less, hey, figure out how to take care of yourself so that you're not, frozen by the time you've done this job for only 5 years, and you can't, you're locked up and you can't be an engaged human being in this world anymore. So and it makes me so sad. And that's where, and then I get that panic feeling again of like, well, how can I get to them? Like, and I know I'm not the only person out there. I get that, but I'm just like, how can I get this information to them? Because that's all I want to do is put it out there and tell them life doesn't have to be like this. Like,
Yes.
you can love this job, do this job, and not be slowly dying because of this job. So
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, that there's a lot of people out there that feel that that's all it is, and they
yes.
don't know any better, because, well, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And so conversations like this are very important. Projects like what you're doing are very important, and being able to get all of that out there. What are some of the things that you are excited about for the future of Help for the Headset?
I would love for it to be a full-blown nonprofit is what my beautiful, perfect vision would be. And the reality is very difficult. I've talked to many people know Sarah Weston, who is an incredible woman and just wants to help other women dispatchers do this, basically, is achieve their dreams. So that would be my goal. And the idea is to get me out there as a speaker or teacher and talk not just at the conferences, but go to agencies. That would be my ultimate fantasy dream job, would be to go to these agencies and teach this about cumulative PTSD, stress injuries, stress cycles, how to take care of yourself without coming in and being like, chastising you for not taking care of yourself, that kind of thing, which can also happen a lot. But that would be my ultimate goal. And again, I know I'm not the only person out there doing it, so I don't have all the answers and I'm not perfect in any way. I just want to go where I would be needed and wanted, would be the goal. So
I think this is a perfect time. For the past few years, I've always said this is our time. Like, this is our time to really shine and get everything out there, because as I said before, it's a new day. The spotlight is on dispatch.
Yes.
It's no longer the what was the common quote, the most important person that you will never see. Well, they're out on the spotlight now, and the people are sharing their healing. They're finding some sort of closure through the power of storytelling. There's all different kinds of things that are going on. So this is truly the era of the headset. There's so much stuff that is going on, and I love it. How can people find out more about what it is that you're doing as we're going into the wrap up of this episode? Which I will say that when we first started, you had said, I don't know that we would have that much to talk about. We're going on like an hour, 15 minutes now.
Yes. And I'm sure we could keep going.
For sure. Yeah. There's so much to talk about.
Yes.
I love it.
Very excited. So, I do have an Instagram. It's at Help for the Headset. That is my email, also for Gmail, Help for the Headset. I have drives, like literal Google drives of resources. And then same with the cumulative PTSD. I am not a hoarder of information or resources. I want people to have it. So if people want the papers and research that I've worked off of, or the books that I've worked off of, or the YouTube videos of alternatives for movement that I've put together, email me, Instagram me, whatever. I will give it to you. Like, I want people to have this information. So, but those are the two main ways. I hopefully will have a Facebook and a website and all that good stuff. But it is a baby. Help for the Headset is a baby. And so I'm trying to build it up, and get it out there. So
awesome.
But yeah.
Well, this has been an excellent conversation. I loved having you on.
Thank you.
I would love to have you on again. This was really good. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Though. If you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now,
Yes.
to speak to yourself in the beginning, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh man. That's a really good question. I just remember how angry I was. So this is what I would say is focus on having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. You are not the victim of everybody. You can absolutely change everything about how you're feeling and what's happening. And you're not too small. Because that's how I felt, was I was too small to make any changes. And that, anybody who started small and gotten big, we're not too small. So I think I would have, mindset changes everything. So I think that's where I would have gone back and changed that.
Perfect. Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate talking to you, and this is fun. So
yeah, this was excellent. Again, thank you so much for being on. And I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments or questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that'll be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Carbine. And again, shout out to patrons as always. Thank you for everything. A perk for patrons only are audio versions of the media partner spotlights, as well as Open Mic Live and the DRT, the Dispatchers Roundtable. And if you would like to become a patron of the podcast and help support us, you can check us out here. And that is going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast. And I thank you very, very much. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. And if you have not done so already, make sure to go to crowdcast.io/C/DTBG4 to register for Dare to Be Great 4. That's going to be coming up December 5th through the 8th of 2022, just coming up in a few weeks. And it is going to be excellent. So I'll see you there, and we'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one.